Over to the US now, and for once, we aren't just talking about an impending indictment for Donald Trump. Instead, long overdue, in my opinion. Federal prosecutors are seeking to bring a new indictment against President Joe Biden's son, Hunter, by the end of this month. No specific charges clear as yet, but he has been under investigation on gun and tax charges, amongst others. Joining me now from Florida in the United States is Lara Trump, commentator and daughter-in-law of the former president. Lara, great to have you on as always. Why is this human being not behind bars yet?
Oh, that's a question we would like answered here in America. That's what we've been waiting for. But here's the really interesting thing about that, Erin. It is the one charge that they cannot connect to Joe Biden. Isn't it rather convenient that they're finally making some moves on Hunter Biden? And yet, of all of the things that are detrimental to our country, the things that we know have been occurring as it relates to Joe, Hunter, the way they've taken money from China, from Russia, from Ukraine, from Kazakhstan. They don't have anything going on with that. This is about throwing a gun in a garbage can or applying for a gun permit when he shouldn't have done it. So obviously, we'll take a win where we get it. But I think it would be nice if we knew that the current occupant of the White House would be held accountable for probably selling out this country over the past couple of decades. That would be nice as well.
Oh, wouldn't it just? At least, though, if Joe Biden does go down or retire or something else, Kamala Harris has come out and said she is ready to lead. Now, before I get your response on this, let's take a really quick look at some of her highlights whilst VP.
To see the moment in time in which we exist and are present, and to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past but the future.
This issue of transportation is fundamentally about just making sure that people have the ability to get where they need to go. It's that basic.
Lara, is there a more terrifying prospect than, say, Joe Biden? I'd say yes. Kamala?
Well, when you look at the approval rating of these two, they're really jockeying for bottom of the barrel. It used to be that Kamala Harris was rock bottom, and then at some point she and Joe kind of swapped places. I think she may be back there now. Look, this is an individual who was so unpopular when she actually ran for president that she dropped out before her home state of California even voted because she was polling so low there. And everyone knows you win your home state. She knew she couldn't even do that. So Americans have very clearly opined on what they think of Kamala Harris. And we definitely do not want her as president of the United States. So look, it's not a great position to be in, of course, here in America. And it is all the more reason that people are panicked and frantic to get to the polls November of 2024 and get somebody back in that White House like Donald J. Trump, who they know can actually do this job.
Speaking of your father-in-law, some developments in Georgia. Are they worrying at all? Where is he at with the legal issues?
You know, it's interesting because it's sort of more of the same. Look, we've seen this show before. It's just a different take on it. Don't forget that right after my father-in-law won in 2016, they started with the Russia collusion hoax. And we all knew in our family there was no collusion with Russia, of course, for Donald Trump to win the White House. All of these charges you've seen against him, from Alvin Bragg all the way down to Fannie Willis in Georgia, we all know it's a bit of the same. We know the truth about this situation. He's done nothing wrong. And I think it's interesting whenever the American people you see starting to wake up and realize just the same. Fool them once with the Russia collusion hoax, shame on you. Fool them twice, and of course, shame on them. They're not falling for this a second time. And I think they know that the reason they're throwing all of this at this one man, at Donald Trump, it's because they are terrified in the DC swamp of having Donald Trump spend 4 more years in that White House. The exposure to what they've been doing in DC and the draining of the swamp, so to speak, would be too much for the swamp to ever take. And so I think people around this country are starting to realize it. He is not concerned about Georgia. He is not concerned about DC. He is not concerned about New York. He is concerned about becoming the 47th president of the United States, which I believe all of these indictments and especially that mugshot solidified for him.
I reckon he'd also be concerned about what's happening around the world when it comes to this, well, blossoming friendship between Russia, Iran, China and North Korea. Look, whether you love him or hate him, no one's saying he's perfect. I think 99% of people would absolutely be certain that this would not have happened under his watch.
Absolutely, because they didn't even want to test what would happen if they pushed the United States when Donald Trump was in office. And now it's a bit of a free for all around the world for nefarious actors, for people who really don't believe in the freedoms that we do here in the US and that you do there in Australia. And it is a very scary thing to, I think, see these people linking up together. And you wonder what they have brewing. You wonder what is going to happen in the near future. And unfortunately, until we get better leadership in the White House, it's a scary time for the whole world because as leader of the free world, the United States obviously should take charge in a situation like this. But you see the inactivity in our White House because we have Joe Biden sitting there. It is very frightening, I think, for us here in America and for people all over the world, Erin, to see this sort of thing happening. But you're exactly right. Never would have happened with Donald Trump. We need to get him back in office. We need to right this ship. We need to get things back on track. This is a great example of the terrible things that happen when you have weak leadership in the U.S. White House.
Now, before I let you go, I know your father-in-law is not looking at debating any other Republican candidates. He says he is so far in front, he doesn't need to. Fair point. But I do see that he said he'd take on Meghan Markle. Now, I would pay upwards of $10 million to watch him do that.
Well, I think there are a lot of people who would like a ticket to that show. You can sign me up as well. I'll go right beside you. We'll sit together. Look, I think you never have to wonder what Donald Trump is thinking really about anything. And he's made his thoughts on Meghan Markle pretty clear. So face to face, I would like to see that as well. Maybe that is a debate that we can get him to take on, though. That would be amazing.
Throw in Harry too, and I am there. Thank you so much for your time, Lara.
You're the best. Thanks, Erin.